The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Book Club Show on Inspire 105.1 FM. That was a lovely nasheed by Maher Hussain called For the Rest of My Life. And today we are going to be talking about a really amazing book called The 4 Traits of the Cherished Muslimah. And that was actually partly the reason I played that nasheed. So, and just to kind of link into this idea of marriage and what that might mean in the current day and age. So what I will do is I will start by giving you a quick introduction to the book itself, and then I'm really delighted to be joined by the author of the book to be able to talk about some of the themes that are part of it. So the introduction is: this book is for all women who seek hope, clarity and direction in their marriages. It is for all women who, like me, have at some point in their lives wished that their marriage had come with a manual. Life brings its own challenges. We all have our own personal struggles and have our own ego to contend with. And when you add marriage to the equation, you are adding another life and its challenges along with your own. This book provides a structure for a healthy marriage. It allows flexibility for each person to be unique in their personality, thus creating a unique marriage. So it's a really lovely, I think, introduction, and gives a good idea of what the book is going to be about. And I really actually quite like the title, which is The 4 Traits of a Cherished Muslimah, and the subheading to that is how it takes more than just love to nourish your marriage. So it'd be really lovely today to be to hear from some of our listeners. So you can call in on 01582 481 822, or you can WhatsApp in on 07779 481 822. And I think what will be really great actually is to hear maybe some experiences of people who perhaps are in the process of getting married. Maybe you're looking for a partner, or maybe you've been married for many years and you can share some of insights and wisdom into all that kind of entails. But I think the most beautiful thing really, and it is even in the book, so the book is written by Sara Malik, and in her dedication she says, I dedicate this book to all women who wish to resurrect the rights that they were given more than 1400 years ago, and who wish to have their own claim and connection to the Messenger of Allah. May we be with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's a really beautiful, I think, intention to have, especially when it comes to reading. And I think I always say this, that reading, obviously we read for pleasure, but the idea is that through it, maybe there's some learning or there's some, benefit that we're taking from it. And I think that's really important. So I'm really excited to be joined by the author of The 4 Traits of a Cherished Muslimah, Sara Malik. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you, Sara, this morning?
I'm okay, alhamdulillah.
Fantastic.
Great to be here.
No, thank you so much for your time, and obviously just sharing, this beautiful book. So do you want to talk a little bit first about what you do and how this book came about and what inspired it?
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, I'm a marriage coach.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a marriage coach for about over 10 years now. And this is my way of helping women in a very tangible form. Something I think in our coaching sessions I often say things and we discuss things, and it's nice to have everything written down like a compilation.
Mm-mm. Yes,
and it's basically a handbook for women, Muslim women, and it will show them how that they can create healthy marriages, and they can be happy and successful in their marriages.
Sure. And so can you maybe explain, before we go into the book, what exactly is a marriage coach? So does it come under kind of an umbrella of counselling, or is it more about something motivational? So how would you define that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I often get new clients texting me saying, I'm looking for a marriage counsellor. And I always have to point out that I'm actually not a counsellor, and I'm a coach.
Sure.
And a coach is different to a counsellor, because with coaching, it's more about where you are and where you want to get to. And it's looking for solutions. It's very solution oriented. So that's why I really love what I do, because, you get somebody calling you, having problems, and you help them to find solutions and, for them to see light at the end of the tunnel, and it's really great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can see actually how beneficial that would be, because you allude to you actually say in the book, the fact that you felt that you didn't have necessarily kind of examples to look from in terms of what a marriage is. And I can't remember the actual wording, but it's possible that many of us would wish that we had a manual. So is that kind of what you were kind of hoping to achieve? It's something that you found that there was not available, so you wanted to kind of fill that gap, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely. I did really wanted to fill a gap with writing this book. And when I got married at 18. I was the youngest out of all my friends. Even my elder sister wasn't married at the time.
Right.
And I didn't have anybody to turn to. So everything I did, I was like the first one.
Yes.
And I didn't have anybody to speak to, because everything that I think from my parents' generation, what they went through, that was all different. It all changed.
Yes.
So I didn't, and it's really interesting that you say that, because I read somewhere recently that coaching actually fills that gap of having that society and that community that would help us, because we don't have that community anymore. So we can turn to coaches instead, which is actually a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's always really nice to be helping people.
Yeah, exactly. Because I guess it's similar even when we talk about kind of parenthood, the fact that, they say that it takes a village to, raise a child, but, it doesn't mean just younger years. It's kind of all, I guess, the whole journey that we take into adulthood and even maybe into marriage. So, no, definitely, I think, you're right. It's kind of, there's obviously a void that you've managed to fill, which I think, mashallah, is really, really amazing.
Alhamdulillah.
And, I just shared just earlier that, the dedication that you've got, in your book, and this idea that you wanted to allow, I guess, yourself and other women or people who are going to read the book, this reconnection with the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So do you kind of feel that is kind of the heart of what the book is trying to do, or because I wonder how, what was the process like of trying to convey that kind of prophetic kind of meaning, I think, through what you were writing?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's really close to my heart, and I think that's something that my book was actually missing when I originally wrote it.
Right.
It was missing that connection when I initially started writing the book. And I've been coaching women for over 10 years now, and during this time I've always been writing down what's working for them, what's not working for them. In terms of my coaching material, I was adding things and taking things out. And so the whole book writing process has been a journey of about 10 years.
Yeah, sure.
And so in that sense, it's really, I'm really happy to finally have got to, publishing day, inshallah, this Friday. But amazing. Like I said, when I started off, it seemed like I was a different person then. I didn't actually have that connection to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at that time. And through this journey, and during the journey, I made that connection, alhamdulillah, from meeting, a fantastic teacher who was able to convey that essence to me. And then that made me readdress the whole book and actually, I think it was connecting all the dots. That actually everything was there, but that connection of seeing all of those traits are really the 4 traits of a cherished Muslimah: leadership, love, wisdom, and justice. They're really beautiful traits within themselves. But when you connect that to the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it just becomes so much more deeper and so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And coming back to this idea of because again you mentioned in the preface where you didn't really have many kind of healthy marriages to maybe take from, so what do you think, I mean, there's one thing where that we were kind of missing, this manual kind of thing, but what about the older generations or our parents' generations? What is it that do you feel we can take from them and maybe potentially not as well? Like what do we also need to leave? Is it just the generation gap, or do you think that it's because now we're living in Britain, or what's maybe the reason for that, do you think?
That's a really interesting question, because I often compare my life to my mum's life, which is natural, and to my aunties, and I do think that they had different challenges. They had a lot of challenges. Their husbands weren't present that much because they're always busy at work. So we didn't see that a connection between husband and wife within, like, getting into the nitty gritty of home life. I guess in our marriages now, we don't have the example of that gratitude.
Sure.
Although our mums were very grateful to their spouses.
Yes.
They had different challenges. They had more housework. They had less help.
Yes,
We probably have more housework, but in a different way.
Yes, exactly.
What I always compare with my mum is she didn't drive, and that was really difficult for her.
Yeah.
But I'd really like not to drive, and I'd really like to have to go everywhere with my husband sitting in the back, just watching the world go by, and then being really content when it's time to drop off the children, saying, "Come on, kids, time for you to go to school," instead of finding a parking space.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting stuck in road rage in London, being horned at, and getting to school on edge and saying, "Right, off you go," and always being stuck in traffic. So that's our problems are very different, but I definitely think that we can take a lot of resilience and patience from them.
Sure.
They were really they did manifest perseverance and making it work. I suppose they had to.
Yes.
Because I don't think they felt like they had any choice at that point. But through this resilience, I think they became stronger women for that.
Sure.
And not only that, they were able to find solutions and make solutions because they knew that they had to make it work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're right, because especially if we, think about my own mother and many others who've left their home in terms of, Pakistan or maybe, a different country and having to rebuild a new life and then to have children in a completely new, a new place. Obviously, subhanAllah, it's kind of something to admire, definitely. So in terms of then kind of following on from that, what do you feel that the book, so the 4 traits of a cherished Muslimah, how can they help to counter, marital challenges? Because like you said, I mean, challenges always exist, right? In terms of marriage, but, current, I guess something, in the current context.
Well, the way that I've written this book is to help women to improve their marriages, whether they're in a happy marriage or they're in a marriage where they need to make changes. So I don't just focus on problems and eliminating those problems. Sure. However, these skills are so important to learn. It's like cooking, gardening. I use the metaphor of the garden a lot in the book.
Yes.
It's about picking out the weeds and sowing seeds of change, sowing new seeds and continuing to sow them in the hope that something will grow from there, and also providing those seeds with nourishment so that they can flourish. In terms of how the book can help with modern day issues, I think one of the main issues a lot of couples have is communication. And this is something I'm really passionate about addressing in the book. If I was to talk about one major topic in the book, it would be that. It'd be healthy and effective communication, getting your point across, getting what's inside you out in a way that it gets you results, the results that you want.
Yes.
Because often you can start off a conversation and it can go in a completely different direction. You can start off talking to your husband about something, and just because of what's going on inside you, you can end up in a massive row talking about things that weren't even the issue in the first place.
Yes, I do that a lot.
Communication's a really,
but
I still do that, but it's about catching yourself and saying, well, no, I've got to stay focused and talk about what the issue actually is. So communication is one, and I think another one is just fostering that love between husband and wife, and how to do it in a modern day context. Gratitude is so important. And often we miss out on the gratitude because we don't actually see what we're getting in terms of love. So I talk about the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman a lot in my book, and how every single person has a different way of expressing their love, and it's about recognizing that your husband might be out working or doing something for you, and that's an expression of love. And similarly, how it gives you tools on how you can express love to your spouse. But as similar, also there's intimacy. Advice, which is often missing in, it's often missing in marriage books, and often, we do have problems with intimacy within the marriage. And then it's, I think just like accepting that help and accepting that support from your husband in the way he's offering it, it kind of balances, it makes it easier to manage all of your responsibilities because you've got someone else helping you rather than pushing them away because you don't actually perceive that to be an act of love.
Yeah, no, definitely. And do you think this, come back to what you were saying about communication, how important that is that something that's missing from our kind of childhood rearing, like, you know, through at home or at school? Do you think it's something that we need to spend more time, because like you said, it's a skill like any other, and do you think that's what is missing, or is it more actually it's just in the context of marriage we struggle with it?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that it's communication. I think our parents did teach us a lot of patience and resilience, but then at the same time, I think from their generation, it was like, don't really talk about it and, you know, just stay quiet, and eventually, you know, through lots of prayer and perseveration, things will work out, which is great, but it's actually quite grueling, and it's quite painstaking, and if you don't talk about your issues, and I think avoidance was something that was common in the past, not really talking about issues, but I think the problems are much greater, because if you don't talk about issues, things can get really problematic really quickly.
It's that notion of how we you know, try to brush things under the under the carpet, and then obviously we have it's obviously not healthy, because it's going to. And in terms of
is this something that we picked up in, you know, whilst growing up? I think so. I mean, I think people who talk about problems can be labelled as troublemakers, and so sometimes, I mean, I know in the past I wouldn't say things because I just didn't want to rock the boat, or I didn't want to sound like a bad person to say, actually, this is upsetting me. So it's, you know, maybe it's a British thing of being too polite and not just not saying it as it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's and it comes under, I guess, resilience, but also just being able to be in tune with your own emotions, and I think sometimes that is also not always encouraged. And like you said, it could be a British thing or just generally, but it's so important, I think, to recognise that. We have a comment from one of our listeners, and it says, my husband works a lot and so do I, so we don't get a chance to communicate. So when I see him, I have so much stress piled up that I release like steam engine. I'm fine after I've released it, but my husband is steaming for a long time after. The point is, if this interaction was regular, then you can release before it builds up. So that's
exactly true. That's a really good comment. And it is, you know, it is natural to talk about, you know, to just offload when, you know, you see one another. But what happens is, because so much comes out, and because you do feel like that steam engine, it is important to set a time out regularly, if that's weekly or it's every few days or it's every other day, if things are problematic, to just talk about the important issues, and when you're addressing certain targeted issues, so it doesn't just become a big offload.
Yes, exactly. And do you feel that in terms of that kind of, again, you know, we're talking about communication, but also how important it is to time out, because I just wonder, what does that mean? So does that come under the kind of notion of self-care, where you're just taking a step back, or is it more about, as a couple, you need to take a time out, you know, and go and do something together?
So you're just talking about what I just said just earlier about the communication and taking
you know, so you were just mentioning the idea of stepping back. So I'm saying, and does that kind of tie in, do you think, with the idea of self-care? And is that self-care something that, like, for example, the wife needs, where she can go and do something in her own time? Or is it also about the couple doing something out of the mundane kind of, you know, tasks?
I think that in my with my template of the 4 traits of leadership, love, wisdom, and justice. Yes. Love incorporates self-care, as in a self-love, something that you give yourself. But giving love, and that is that quality time, that's taking time out for one another, that is another part of love. And, you know, it's a separate part where you're investing in your relationship with your husband. And it is enjoyable, and it could be seen as self-care. But I think with self-care, it's very distinct, because it's something that you do for yourself that relaxes and unwinds you, which is actually separate from the relationship.
Right.
In my book, I talk about the different areas where, different areas of one's life. And it's so important to give each area that special time and to fill that cup up of love. So if it's the marriage cup, or if it's your spiritual cup, or if it's the one with your friends, or if it's your career, to just make sure that they're all balanced.
Yeah, exactly, and it's so important. And then can you talk a little bit about how the 4 traits came about? So what are these? I know you've mentioned them already. If you can just, for our listeners, just to repeat that. So what are the 4 traits, and how did they, what are they based on?
So one of the reasons that I wrote this book was because I was really dissatisfied with the books that were out there on the market. I found that when I was reading these books and applying them, or I was seeing women apply them in their marriages, I'd always find that they had components which were missing, and those missing components could often be quite problematic. So I was always thinking, this book's really great, and this approach is really great, but it's kind of missing this, and that approach is really good, but it's kind of missing something else. So I was always thinking, what is it that they've all got in common, and what is it that what fills in, what complements the other one? And so I was always looking for this system, and alhamdulillah, I found it through my studies of neurolinguistic programming. I found out there were some experts that were advocating that within us we all have certain traits, and if we apply these traits in our lives, then we can be a whole, complete person. And so I started looking at these traits, and I found out that they were actually originating from archetypes. And archetypal theory is something that the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung identified in the early 1900s. And so I was like, wow, this is already in place. And then as I followed, the breadcrumb trail, which I'm always doing, I found out that it's like 75 years later, like 1992, a Jungian analyst called Robert Moore further developed this into 4 specific traits.
And what we'll do, Sara, sorry to cut you off, what we'll do is we'll speak a little bit about that actually just after the break, so we're just heading over. So to our listeners, grab yourselves a cup of tea or coffee, and we will see you in a few moments. Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.